In this video, we're going to discuss raising the minimum wage and what happens when you do that. Now, before we do that, let's address a couple things. First of all, some of you younger people, the under 40 crowd, maybe even not quite that age range, are not going to understand that these minimum wage jobs were never meant to be a living wage. Minimum wage jobs, McDonald's, retail, flipping burgers, things like that, were meant to introduce young people, primarily teenagers, 15, 16, 17 years old, even 18, teach them about the working world and how it operates. It was to introduce them to it. Yes, some might have moved up, became managers and whatnot, and made a career out of it, but it was never what the minimum wage jobs were intended to be. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. The whole aspect of a retail job, burger flipping, or becoming a living wage is something new that's come up. And that's come up for a bunch of different reasons. College graduates aren't finding work. Families can't find jobs to pay what they need to pay, and so they're looking at minimum wage jobs as the only job they have available. So they're trying to make ends meet. That's due to a lot of economies, some of the things the government's done, and in some aspects the government has intentionally held us back, so we become dependent on them. By becoming dependent on the government, then we re-elect these same individuals because we need them in order to maintain our status quo or be able to get subsidiaries, whether there be food stamps, welfare, gain in some places, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, all these things are provided by the government, and if the government continues to let things stay the way they are, then we need to vote them in so we can maintain them. Okay, so let's talk about raising the minimum wage and the impact it has on that. I want you to take a look at your own personal finances first. Okay, if your landlord raises your rent, or if your mortgage payment goes up, then how do you handle that? Well, in most cases, you handle it by adjusting your budget. In other words, maybe you start buying more generic foods. Maybe you cut back on the amount of time you spend going out. In other words, you make cutbacks in order to be able to make ends meet. Keeping that in mind, the same thing applies to big business, whether it's Walmart, McDonald's, Burger King, you name it, any of those minimum wage jobs, the same thing applies. Walmart is certainly entitled to their profits. They earned them. They're a big corporation. They earned them. They're going to want to maintain them. So what do you do if you raise the minimum wage? Let's say minimum wage is $9 an hour. And the popular new figure for everyone is $15 an hour. What does Walmart do in order to fix this and maintain profits or even remain open? Remember, this minimum wage at $15 doesn't just apply to the big corporations of Walmart. It would apply to some of the little mom and pop shops. What about the little coffee shop on down the street, and now they have to pay their workers $15 an hour? So where do they do that? How do they make a profit? How do they stay open? And this would include Walmart. And would include a McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Jack in the Box. It includes all these places, JCPenney, all these minimum wage jobs. The same thing applies. Whether it's a mom and pop shop run by a family or whether it's a huge corporation. Because you're taking thousands in corporations and thousands of people, and now you're paying them $3, $4, $5 an hour more than what you were paying them, maybe even more. How do you come back from that? How do you stay open? How do you maintain a profit, maintain a business? You have to make adjustments. Well, what do? It's simple. There are many factors that will come into play. First of all, you reduce hours on your employees. It might be a pain in the butt, but you got to do it. If you're paying everybody $15 an hour now, you're going to have to reduce that, and by doing so, you reduce hours. So maybe the person that was getting 20 hours a week is now going to get 15. Maybe the person that was getting 15 hours a week is now getting 10. And it goes on, and it gets worse. What about benefits that are getting these individuals are getting paid? Or what if some of these people that were getting, let's say, 30 plus hours that qualified as, let's say, full time, get cut back and they lose their benefits? Now they have to be dependent on Medicaid or welfare or food stamps or whatever, because now they've lost a big chunk of their income because their employer couldn't afford to keep them at their present hours rate or their present status as a full-timer, because the minimum wage had gone up too high and they couldn't remain open or remain profitable at $15 an hour. So they cut benefits, they cut hours, they cut people. If a store employs 25 people and they need to cut their expenses down, what do? They're going to lay some off. So take a quarter of them. Maybe they laid off 5. There's 5 people, 5 families now that don't have an income. And they become dependent on the government. They go to food stamps, they go to welfare, they go to Medicaid. They seek out other full-time or other part-time work, which may not even be as much as what they were getting. They go on unemployment, which only lasts for a period of time. They become dependent on everyone else. Or they become homeless or run to the shelters. Who knows? They turn to crime. As sad as it may sound, some may actually turn to crime. So who are we helping if these people are losing their jobs? $15 an hour is a great wage, but it's not what the minimum wage jobs will do. What do we expect? Have you noticed? I can tell you 2 examples of what's happened already. At a local McDonald's here in me, they have put a kiosk in the lobby in which to order your food. This removes the idea of walking to the counter and ordering your food from an employee. That means McDonald's can now hire less people that they would have to pay $15 an hour and let somebody order from the kiosk. And honestly, the kiosk was simple. I used it the other day just as a test to see how well it would work. I went out, I ordered my food, punched it all in, waited for my food to be ready, and when they told me it was ready, I picked it up. And sadly, now somebody's without a job because the person I would have gave my order to is now out of a job. In my local Walmart, at least half the registers now are missing, and they've been replaced with those self-scanning registers in which you scan everything yourself, pay for it with your debit card, and bag it right then and there. So how many employees were lost? If they removed, let's say, 10 registers, does that mean there's 10 Walmart employees that have either lost their jobs or had reduced hours? Probably so. So who are we helping? Who's really gaining from this movement to pay everybody $15 an hour? Nobody's getting helped. The only one's being helped is the government, because the government is now forcing us to be dependent on them, which forces us to elect them. This is about self-preservation for the politicians. This isn't about helping Americans. You want to help Americans, then you make education easier for them. You help you give benefits to these minimum wage job places for hiring the unemployed, hiring the people that are on welfare or food stamps or Medicaid or Medi-Cal. Give them an incentive to do this. Get these people at least working. Train them. Let the employees offer training to help them move up so they're not stuck in a non-living wage situation. It's the reality of the job. No one can afford. How many people can afford to go to college anymore? And that's where the real jobs are at. So what do? No, I'm sorry. Raising minimum wage to $15 an hour is not the answer. And I'm saying this as I work in the retail industry, and I certainly see and experience minimum wage. It's not the answer. Minimum wage was intended to introduce young people to the working world so they would have an idea of what the working world's like before they move into a real career with real money and payments. Okay, I welcome your input, but honestly, there is no good reason to raise the minimum wage. You will see higher prices, you will see more unemployment, you will see more people seeking help through the government. There's no positive side of this. because when the minimum wage goes up, all the prices will go up, and the minimum wage earner who's now making $15 an hour will not see that he or she is better off than what they were, because everything will be adjusted so that the employers can still make a profit, which is their right. Don't think that Walmart, McDonald's, Jack in the Box, J.C. Penney are not entitled to their profits. They are certainly 100% entitled to their profits. They earn them. Just because they're rich doesn't mean they have to give it to us. You want to create jobs? Then raising the minimum wage will only take jobs away from people. It will take them away from that and will make them more dependent on the government. There are too many downsides to raising the minimum wage and no real upside. Again, raising the minimum wage is not going to make life more affordable for these minimum wage earners, because everything else is going to be adjusted to meet this so that these companies can remain profitable. So the $5 handbag you were going to buy is now going to be $7 or $8. So what's the difference? If groceries were costing you $100 a week, now they're going to cost you $130 a week. And again, I'm just throwing numbers out there. So again, where's the profit in this? No, the answer lies somewhere else. The answer lies in finding ways to get these people who maybe only have a high school education or even less, finding them jobs that can be a living wage and where they can work for and support their families. Raising a minimum wage is not going to help anyone except the politicians. Don't be fooled. This is not about helping the people. This is about politicians trying to keep their jobs. Thank you.